In 1913, a child in Ohio was sent to live with her grandmother. Not in a car, not by bus, but by mail. She was sealed in a package, stamped, and sent like a parcel across the country. Hard to believe, right? But the truth is, America has a history of strange moments so bizarre they almost seem made up. But no, these are so real that it almost feels like history's been playing a prank on us. And what you're about to hear might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this country. So let's dive in. 1. Mailing children. In January 1913, something pretty wild happened in Ohio. No, not a flash mob or a surprise influencer stunt, but something that would make anyone cringe if it happened today. An Ohio couple, looking to send their 8-month-old son James to his grandmother in Batavia, decided to take full advantage of the brand-new parcel post service. For just 15 cents in postage, their baby was on his way, riding the rails to his destination. Now, don't imagine James being shoved into a box with a stamp on his forehead. That's a Hollywood exaggeration. Instead, the baby traveled with trusted postal workers, not some random guy who thought he'd be funny and toss him into a mailbag for giggles. This wasn't some crazy idea straight out of a horror movie. It was simply a product of the times. Why was this even possible? Well, Parcel Post, the service that allowed people to send packages of all sizes, was a new concept. It had just launched, and the rules around it were still being worked out. Parents figured, why not send our kid with the mailman? And honestly, it worked. After all, the baby was insured for $50, just in case something went wrong. He arrived safe and sound, and the whole thing didn't get outlawed until a couple of years later when the Postal Service realized this could get really, really weird. While it wasn't common practice, there were about 7 known cases between 1913 and 1915 where children were sent like this. And while we're not about to start shipping our babies via FedEx anytime soon, we've got to admit, it was definitely an inventive way to take advantage of the postal system. Wouldn't recommend it, though, unless you're mailing your kid to Hogwarts. 2. Harrison Ruffin Tyler, the grandson of a president still alive. Let's travel back to the 1800s, where a lot of things were happening. Revolutionary politics, wild fashion choices, hello, top hats, and the birth of a young man who would later become the 10th President of the United States, John Tyler. Now, Tyler's story might have ended with his presidency, but his legacy continued to unfold in a surprising way. Enter Harrison Ruffin Tyler, the grandson of John Tyler, who's still alive today. I know, your brain's probably trying to do the math right now. Wait, this guy's literally descended from someone born in the 1700s? Yup, he is. Harrison was born in 1928, and because his grandfather, John Tyler, had a very busy love life, he fathered 15 children. That's not just a large family, that's an entire basketball team. Harrison was a direct descendant. Here's where it gets wild. John Tyler was born in 1790, making Harrison the only living person whose grandparent lived in the 18th century. You'd think he'd have an ancient artifact lying around, or maybe just casually drop knowledge like, oh yeah, my grandpa invented the fork or something. But instead, Harrison has lived through nearly a century of history himself, living life as a living link to an era long gone. To make it even more surreal, John Tyler's other descendants are also living, and they're technically part of one of the longest generational lines we know about. So next time someone tries to say, the good old days, just tell them there's a man alive today whose granddad actually signed the documents that helped shape America. Talk about history that's still breathing. How does that feel, Grandpa John? 3. Cows outnumber humans. You know the whole moo and aha of farm life thing? Well, it's real, and it's weirdly more common than you might think. In some parts of the Midwest and Great Plains, cattle outnumber people. Like, cows literally run the place. You can find this phenomenon in places like Idaho, Kansas, and South Dakota. In fact, there are some counties where cows outnumber humans by 4 to 1. That means, for every human you find, there are 4 cows staring at you with their judgmental eyes. It's like a never-ending beef festival, and you didn't even know it. So why is this? It all comes down to agriculture. Cattle farming is one of the most prominent industries in the U.S., especially in these states. But instead of a bustling cityscape, you get endless fields, cow herds, and a very quiet lifestyle. Now you might think, okay, that's pretty random, but what makes it funnier is that the cattle outnumbering people isn't some ancient anomaly. It's happening right now in 2026. So So the next time you're in Idaho and feeling like you're on a nature walk, just remember you're outnumbered by cows. They're the real locals here. 4. The Brown Statue of Liberty. Let's talk about the Statue of Liberty, that beautiful lady we all know and love. We see her standing proud and green like a symbol of freedom and, well, looking like she could probably use a little sunscreen. But guess what? She didn't always look this way. When the Statue of Liberty was first presented to the United States in 1885, she wasn't the lovely green color we're used to. No, she was shiny copper, a nice clean brown color, almost like she was dipped in chocolate. Imagine if that was her permanent look, would have made every selfie way better. But here's the thing, that shiny copper wasn't meant to last. Over the next 20 years, the air and salt water started oxidizing the copper, turning it into the iconic patina green we all recognize today. The change wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a slow transformation. Think of it like that one friend who's always bragging about their beach tan, but in reality, they've just been sunburned for weeks. The funny part is, the green patina was unexpected, but it ended up becoming the symbol everyone thinks of today. It's funny how history can change things up. Something that was once considered flawed ended up being loved by millions. Maybe that's a metaphor for life? Who knows? 5. The U.S. once banned Christmas. Oh, Christmas, the time for gifts, tinsel, bad sweaters, and way too much eggnog. But imagine this. One Christmas wasn't so merry in Massachusetts. In fact, Christmas was actually banned for a brief period in 17th century America. In 1659, the Puritans, who were just out here trying to be extra strict, decided that Christmas was too pagan. They were like, sorry folks, no celebrating the birth of Jesus today. It's just too fun for our liking. They fined people who dared to celebrate Christmas, yes, seriously, and anyone who dared put up a Christmas tree or decorate with holiday cheer risked getting fined. Talk about a buzzkill. So imagine living in a time when even a Christmas carol might get you in trouble. No holiday parades, no festive feasts, and definitely no jingle bells blasting from your neighbor's radio. In a strange twist of fate, the Puritans tried to force the whole nation to stay in their lane. Little did they know that centuries later, Christmas would become the most widely celebrated holiday in America. Guess the Puritans were just a bit ahead of their time, but in the wrong way. 6. The Eiffel Tower was meant to be a temporary exhibit in the U.S. Imagine visiting Paris and thinking, okay, Eiffel Tower, cool, but how would this look if it was just sitting in my backyard? Weird, right? But at one point, that was the plan. The Eiffel Tower was originally designed as a temporary exhibit for the 1889 World's Fair in Paris, a celebration of French art and engineering. The catch? The French government didn't actually plan for it to last. In fact, the Eiffel Tower's original plans included it being taken down after 20 years. But here's where it gets even wilder. The tower was originally considered for a spot in the United States. The U.S. was actually the front runner for this grand metallic structure before it was decided that it'd stay in Paris. The irony? They thought it was too out of place, not realizing it would eventually become the most iconic monument in France. Today, the Eiffel Tower stands as the heart of Paris, but its roots as a temporary structure designed to be taken down just add a twist to its narrative. So next time you're standing at the base of that tower, just think, if the U.S. had taken the chance, we'd have a whole different Paris, maybe with a much larger shopping mall underneath the Eiffel Tower. 7. The tallest mountain? All right, picture this. You're hiking up Mount Everest, the highest peak in the world. You're at the top, feeling like the king of the world, and then, boom, you hear this little voice. Hey, just so you know, Mauna Kea is actually taller. You stop? What? Yes, you heard that right. Mauna Kea, located in Hawaii, is technically the tallest mountain on Earth. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Everest? Well, Everest is the tallest mountain above sea level, but when you measure Mauna Kea from its base on the ocean floor, it stands at a whopping 33,500 feet, which is over 13,000 feet taller than Everest. So, yes, Hawaii is holding the title for the tallest mountain if you're willing to measure from the bottom of the ocean. So why don't we all climb Mauna Kea instead? Because, well, Everest has that "I'm the highest mountain" status, but really, the moral of the story is, everything is taller when you start measuring it from below. This gives new meaning to the phrase, "there's always someone taller." Guess Mauna Kea just had the better real estate deal. 8. The wrestling president. Let's talk about Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves, led the country through the Civil War, and, oh yeah, also pinned people in wrestling matches. That's right, Lincoln wasn't just a president, he was a wrestling champion. Before he became the 16th president, Lincoln was known for being an elite wrestler, and we're not talking about a casual hobby here. He reportedly wrestled over 300 matches, and, get this, only lost one. That's a 99.7% win rate. Imagine that. The tallest president in history, at 6 feet 4 inches, was also the guy you definitely didn't want to mess with at a local bar. Now, I'm not saying he could have solved the Civil War with a rock bottom, but if he had, I'm pretty sure it would have ended faster. In fact, Lincoln's wrestling skills were so well known that he was inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1992, over a century after he passed. So next time someone tries to tell you history's boring, just mention that Lincoln could take you down with a single move and see what happens. 9. Fake mustaches in church. We all know those cheesy fake mustaches you can buy at the dollar store, the kind that make you look like you're auditioning for a clown role. Well, guess what? In Alabama, wearing a fake mustache in church that causes laughter is illegal. Yes, in Alabama, if you walk into a church wearing one of those fake mustaches that makes everyone burst out laughing, you might end up with a fine. The church setting is considered serious business, and apparently, laughter induced by a fake mustache is not allowed. Here's where it gets funny. We're talking about fake mustaches, things that you can easily buy at a party store. No one's out here smuggling fake facial hair with a deep sense of malice. But apparently, some things are just too much for the pews. Who knew Alabama's religious laws were so invested in the art of facial hair? 10. The U.S. once had an official Army Camel Corps. Did you know the U.S. had a Camel Corps? No, this isn't a Weird Nature documentary you missed. This is real. Back in the 1850s, the U.S. military imported camels from the Middle East to use as pack animals in the desert Southwest. Here's the deal. The Army thought, hey, these camels are used to dry, hot conditions, so why not use them in the arid regions of the West? The plan was to have camels carry supplies, patrol the border, and maybe even replace horses in some cases. Makes sense, right? Except for one thing, nobody told the camels about the American West. The camels were fine in the desert, but they weren't too thrilled about the rugged terrain, and they started causing chaos. They even scared the soldiers' horses. In fact, after about 10 years of weird camel drama, the U.S. Army finally gave up on them. Camels were sold off to private owners, and the Camel Corps disbanded. So yeah, if you ever find yourself walking around the Southwest and wondering what weird historical relic could have roamed those deserts, just imagine a bunch of camels in military uniforms packing supplies. What a time to be alive. 11. George Washington. Never had wooden teeth. It's time to bust a myth that's been floating around forever. You know how they say George Washington had wooden teeth? Well, turns out that's a load of historical garbage. Washington did have dentures, but they were not made of wood. Instead, his teeth were made of a mix of ivory, gold, lead, and even human teeth. Yes, you read that correctly, human teeth. Washington's dentures were assembled from a collection of materials that would make a modern-day dentist run for the hills. And the whole wooden teeth myth? It likely started because the ivory teeth had a woody appearance after years of staining. So next time someone mentions that wooden teeth nonsense, just smile your healthy human tooth smile and tell them the truth. Washington's dental care was way darker than the myths. 12. Donkeys in tubs. We've all heard of donkey jokes, but this one takes it to a whole new level. In Arizona, it's actually illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub. Yeah, you heard me right. Donkeys. Bathtubs. Illegal. The law comes from a bizarre incident in 1924 where a donkey got stuck in a bathtub after a flood. The donkey had wandered into the tub and the owners couldn't get it out. so the authorities got involved and the law was passed. It's a perfect example of how a weird moment in history can lead to some oddly specific rules. Honestly, imagine getting fined for letting your donkey sleep in a tub. It feels like something out of a weird old western. Next time you're in Arizona and you see a donkey relaxing by the water, make sure it's not in a bathtub, or you might end up in donkey jail. 13. There are more fake flamingos than real ones in the U.S. Some people collect stamps, some collect action figures, but in the U.S., it seems people collect fake flamingos. In fact, there are more fake flamingos than real flamingos in this country. Yes, plastic flamingos outnumber the real ones, especially in yard decorations. You know those kitschy plastic flamingos you see in front yards, sometimes even in gardens? Yeah, that trend has totally eclipsed nature itself. It all started in the 1950s with a little plastic bird by the name of flamingo. What was once a simple decoration idea soon became a national obsession. And now, in 2023, these flamingo lawn ornaments are a thing of kitsch beauty, outnumbering the actual real flamingos that live in the wild. So next time you're driving through a neighborhood and see those weird pink flamingos in the yard, don't feel bad for them. They're part of an accidental wildlife takeover where plastic wins. 14. Alaska is the everything state. Alaska is like that friend who insists they can do everything. You know, the one who says, I can bake a cake, do a backflip, and solve a Rubik's Cube, all before breakfast. Well, Alaska is the geographical equivalent of that friend. Technically, Alaska is the northernmost, westernmost, and easternmost state in the U.S. Yes, you read that right. Easternmost. Here's how. The Aleutian Islands, the ones sticking out of Alaska into the Pacific, cross the 181st meridian, which is the boundary between the western and eastern hemispheres. So, when you look at a map, Alaska's Aleutian Islands are actually in the eastern hemisphere, meaning Alaska is, technically, on both sides of the world's prime meridian. Alaska isn't just cool, it's geographically indecisive, popping up everywhere. It's like the Renaissance man of U.S. geography. Yeah, I'm the North, the West, and also the East, it says casually. 15. The U.S. has no official language. If you thought America was the land of the free, where everyone speaks English, you're in for a shock. The U.S. has no official language. Zero. Nada. Zilch. Despite English being the dominant language spoken, the country has never passed an official law stating that English is the language of the land. I mean, we're kind of used to hearing things like, "Welcome to America, home of the English speakers," right? But nope. In terms of the law, the U.S. never declared a national language. So technically, someone could come to the U.S., speak Mandarin or Swahili, and there'd be no official legal requirement for anyone to speak English to them. America's official language? Well, it's kind of a mystery. This fun fact makes you think, oh, so we might be bilingual without even knowing it? Yeah, pretty much. 16. The Liberty Bell really does have a spelling mistake. All right, the Liberty Bell, that iconic symbol of freedom, is supposed to be perfect, right? Wrong. The Liberty Bell actually has a spelling mistake, and not just a typo. We're talking about a real historical error. You know the famous inscription on the bell that says, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof," Leviticus 25 verse 10. Well, the word proclaim was supposed to be spelled as proclaim. The real kicker here is that this error was made back in 1752, and for all these years, it's still there. And honestly, nobody bothered to fix it. Talk about a historical blooper. The Founding Fathers wanted liberty for all, but apparently not all their spelling. So, if you're ever standing under the bell and someone points out that spelling mistake, just remember, even freedom has its flaws. 17. Independence was voted on July 2nd, not July 4th. Everyone loves a good fireworks show on July 4th, right? Well, hold on. Independence Day wasn't actually voted on July 4th. The Second Continental Congress officially voted to declare independence from Great Britain on July 2nd, 1776. So, what happened on July 4th? The Declaration of Independence was finalized and then approved. The 4th of July became the official celebration, but the real vote for independence came 2 days earlier. Funny how we're all singing Happy 4th of July, when the real date was July 2nd. Maybe we should start rebranding it as 2nd of July. But then we'd lose the chance for all those amazing BBQs. Priorities, people. 18. George Washington. Never lived in the White House. George Washington, the first president and the face on that $1 bill, never lived in the White House. Surprising, right? You'd think that the guy who led the American Revolution and established the presidency would have kicked back and put his feet up in the country's most famous residence. But here's the kicker. Washington never lived there because the White House wasn't even finished during his presidency. Instead, he lived in a series of other houses in New York and Philadelphia during his time in office. The first president who helped shape the nation's capital didn't even live in the Capitol's iconic symbol. Irony at its finest. 19. The first U.S. flag design was made by a 17-year-old student. You know that famous American flag with 13 stripes and 50 stars? The one you've probably seen a million times, draped over everything from T-shirts to parades? It wasn't designed by some high-profile politician or military general. No, the very first design of the U.S. flag came from a 17-year-old student. In 1777, Francis Hopkinson, a young artist and musician, submitted his flag design to the Continental Congress, which officially adopted it as the nation's flag. The kid was barely old enough to drive, but he was out here making patriotic history. The flag he created didn't have the 50 stars we recognize today, but it was the foundation of the iconic design we all know. So next time you see the flag, just remember, it was designed by a teenager, not some seasoned patriot or military genius. You just know that Hopkinson was probably on Red Bull when he came up with the design. 20. The U.S. has no official language. Yes, the U.S. has no official language, and no, this isn't some typo. Despite the fact that English is overwhelmingly the most spoken language, there is no law in the U.S. making it the official language. In fact, there are many states and cities that have large populations speaking other languages like Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog. The reason? Well, it's a historical quirk. There's just never been a push for a law, and most Americans simply assume English is the official language. And let's face it, with 50 states, that's one complicated debate. But for now, English reigns as the de facto language, though you might want to brush up on a few Spanish phrases if you're in certain parts of the country. Who knows? One day, we might be ordering a burger in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. If you love learning about bizarre discoveries, dark tales, and forgotten moments in history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more thrilling stories that are sure to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew.